There's a chart that pops up on almost every personal finance channel and social media feed these days. It promises that even a modest sum of money can grow into a massive fortune after 3 or 4 decades of steady investing. You know, the one with that elegant upward curve beginning almost flat before suddenly shooting skyward like a rocket? Most of us have come across it countless times by now. The core message never changes: just get started, keep at it consistently, and watch as the power of compounding takes over. Yet hardly anyone pauses to raise the obvious follow-up question. If this chart reflects reality and compounding truly represents an unstoppable wealth-building machine, then why do so many individuals who have invested diligently for years still find themselves struggling financially? It is rarely because they failed to begin or lacked patience. Instead, there is a hidden aspect of that chart which rarely gets discussed openly. The curve simply does not curve upward for everyone in the same way. Compounding comes with a practical minimum threshold, and the majority of people remain stuck beneath it. You have likely encountered the classic example of a single penny doubling in value each day for 30 days, resulting in more than $5 million. Financial teachers love pulling out this illustration whenever they explain the magic of compound growth. Technically speaking, the math checks out. However, it misleads in a subtle yet profound manner by sneaking in an unrealistic premise that goes unquestioned: a full 100% return every single day. That is far from any realistic rate of return. It belongs firmly in the realm of pure fantasy. In everyday markets, broad-based index funds typically deliver around 7 to 10% per year on average. Once you adjust for inflation, the real growth often settles closer to 6 or 7%. That translates to a penny increasing by only a tiny sliver of a cent rather than doubling overnight. Here is the crucial point that often gets overlooked. When your invested amounts stay relatively small, that minuscule growth remains practically invisible to the eye. Picture putting $100 to work and achieving an 8% return in a strong year. You end up with just $8 added. $8 alone. That amount will not transform your circumstances. It barely covers a casual meal out. Nevertheless, the common refrain continues that the starting sum makes little difference. Simply begin investing right away. Although the advice stems from good intentions, it glosses over an essential reality. True compounding only starts to feel powerful and noticeable once your capital base surpasses a specific level. Prior to reaching that point, you are essentially engaged in slow, linear saving that can feel laborious and unrewarding. The curve stays nearly horizontal. The visual on the chart looks dull and uninspiring. For a vast number of people, this flat section defines their entire financial journey as they puzzle over why the promised magic never seems to activate. The harshest element is how they often turn the blame inward. They assume they selected the incorrect investment vehicle, started at the wrong moment, or simply lack sufficient financial intelligence. Yet the chosen fund performed adequately. The entry timing was reasonable enough. The real issue never centered on the particular strategy employed. It always came down to insufficient scale. So exactly what constitutes this critical threshold? It lacks a single universal dollar figure. The precise point varies according to your expected returns and available time frame. Nevertheless, the underlying idea applies broadly to everyone. Compounding only delivers tangible, meaningful impact when your principal grows large enough that the earnings begin producing additional earnings you can clearly notice and appreciate. Allow me to illustrate with practical numbers. Suppose you have accumulated $5,000 and it earns 8%. In the first year, that yields $400. Acceptable progress, perhaps. Yet those $400 generate only around $32 in the following year. The snowball effect stays modest at best. Contrast that with a $100,000 base. The same 8% now produces $8,000 in year one. Then that $8,000 itself earns roughly $640 the next year. Suddenly, momentum builds noticeably. The snowball starts gathering real mass and speed. Charlie Munger famously remarked that reaching the first $100,000 proves the toughest hurdle He was not speaking purely about the emotional challenge, although that exists too. His insight was deeply mathematical. Under $100,000, you remain the primary driver of progress. Your personal savings habits, income level, and extra effort determine most of the advancement. The broader market plays only a minor supporting role at that stage. Once you push past $100,000, a fundamental change occurs. Your capital begins contributing a substantial portion of the growth. There will be mornings when you check your portfolio and discover it has increased by more in a single night than your daily wages from work. That moment marks the threshold. It is when compounding transitions from an abstract concept in textbooks to a living, breathing force you experience directly in your daily finances. The difficult truth remains that the majority of people never arrive at this point. This happens not due to laziness or financial irresponsibility in most cases. Let me share some sobering statistics to explain why. Data from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances indicates that the median retirement account balance for American households headed by someone between 55 and 64 years old stands around $185,000. This figure reveals that half of households nearing retirement age hold less than that amount. Many cross the $100,000 level only in recent years if they manage to reach it whatsoever. They dedicated decades to investing, yet the bulk of that period was spent languishing on the flat portion of the curve. Just as the mathematics begins generating genuine excitement, they often shift into withdrawal mode. This is the stage where we need to speak candidly about conventional financial guidance. Suggestions such as skipping daily coffees, eliminating streaming services, and setting for certain individuals with higher earning power, that path works effectively. For many others, however, it falls short. Consider someone earning $35,000 annually while facing $1,200 in monthly rent. Their challenge is not excessive spending, but fundamentally inadequate income. You could trim your grocery expenses to the absolute minimum and still lack sufficient surplus to construct the capital base required for compounding to accelerate. This mismatch explains why the standard early investing encouragement frustrates so many listeners. It conveniently bypasses the most demanding initial climb. It resembles advising someone to savor the breathtaking summit panorama while omitting any mention of the steep, sheer cliff that must be conquered beforehand. Crossing the first $100,000 is no casual checkpoint you simply glide through. It functions more like a formidable barrier for those carrying student loans, facing unexpected medical costs, raising children, or simply navigating daily life in a high-cost environment on limited earnings. That barrier can appear insurmountable and everlasting. An often ignored dimension involves the mental and emotional toll. Imagine contributing $200 monthly over 2 years, only to see your account reach $5,100 with $4,800 representing your own contributions. The modest $300 in growth can feel almost mocking in its smallness. At the same time, your online feeds overflow with stories of others crediting compounding for their impressive wealth accumulation. This contrast easily breeds self-doubt, making you question your own efforts. Rest assured, you are not failing. The underlying mathematics simply has not yet tilted in your favor during those early phases. Please understand, I share these observations not to dampen motivation or spread negativity. Quite the opposite. Ignoring or downplaying the existence of this barrier ultimately causes greater harm. When influencers present compound growth charts that leap from year 1 straight to year 30, they highlight only the triumphant endpoint. They omit the prolonged stretch of minimal visible advancement that leads countless individuals to abandon the journey entirely. The true expense tied to this compounding minimum is not mathematical illiteracy. It is the demoralizing effect of facing honest numbers that can discourage action. As a result, people either avoid starting altogether or they begin with enthusiasm only to pause or quit when initial outcomes appear insignificant. Before outlining practical steps to address this situation, I want to acknowledge you directly. If you have stayed with me through this discussion, you clearly approach money matters with more depth and curiosity than the average person. That quality is valuable and sets you apart. If you appreciate content that digs beneath superficial tips and explores the fuller reality, consider subscribing with one quick tap. A large portion of viewers have not yet joined, and your support truly sustains the creation of more thoughtful material like this. With that said, let us explore actionable solutions. If the initial $100,000 represents a wall, what strategies help you surmount it? The responses lack glamour, yet they prove effective and rest on three fundamental pillars. First, prioritize expanding your income over obsessive budgeting alone. While still below the compounding threshold, each additional dollar earned carries greater weight than each dollar merely conserved through cutbacks. This perspective does not endorse relentless grind culture or burning out in pursuit of more. Rather, it emphasizes directing your energy toward areas of maximum leverage. Pursuing a salary increase, developing a profitable side venture, or acquiring skills that boost your market value will accelerate your progress far more than downgrading to a less expensive mobile plan. Attempting to budget your way across such a substantial gap rarely succeeds. You must generate your way across it through higher earnings. Second, safeguard your accumulating base with utmost care. The primary threat to wealth in its formative stages is rarely a poorly chosen investment. Instead, it is the unexpected crisis that wipes out your reserves, such as a major car repair, a health expense, or sudden unemployment. This reality underscores why maintaining a dedicated emergency fund transcends basic recommendation. It serves as essential structural support. The fund shields the capital you are patiently assembling, ensuring that compounding has a solid foundation once you eventually surpass the threshold. Each occasion when you deplete your savings completely and restart from zero effectively winds back the clock on compounding progress. Every such setback can set you back by several years rather than mere months. Third, and this aspect receives less emphasis than it deserves, avoid gauging your advancements solely against those dramatic compound interest illustrations. Such visuals are crafted primarily to captivate and promote immediate engagement. They spotlight the steep upward surge while concealing the extended horizontal stretch you must endure patiently for years. Shift your focus instead to monitoring your consistent savings percentage and overall net worth in concrete dollar terms. Take time to recognize and celebrate incremental achievements at $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, and $25,000. These celebrations matter not because compounding exerts massive influence at those stages, but because each added dollar shortens the remaining distance to the point where the mathematics truly ignites. Envision the process as constructing a takeoff runway for your financial future. The aircraft does not lift off from the very start of the pavement. It requires the complete length before gaining sufficient speed to soar. Yet every single section of that runway you complete holds importance. Without laying the full foundation, the plane remains grounded indefinitely. Here is the central insight I hope stays with you. Compounding represents a genuine and potent mechanism. It ranks among the most significant drivers of long-term wealth creation available to individuals. At the same time, it is neither enchanted nor equitable in its application. It tends to amplify advantages for those who already possess larger starting resources. A greater base allows the force to labor more vigorously on your behalf. A smaller base renders its effects far suppler and harder to perceive. None of this implies you should refrain from investing any amount you can manage currently. On the contrary, you definitely ought to begin or continue investing what is feasible. However, pair that discipline with a determined and realistic push to elevate your earnings while diligently guarding your accumulated savings. Those combined actions are what propel you toward the threshold. They are what finally lift you beyond the prolonged flat segment of the curve. Success stems not merely from the passage of time or sustained patience in isolation. It arises from the synergy of time, patience, and a sufficiently substantial base that allows the mathematics to exert real influence. This compounding minimum exists as a factual element of financial reality. Recognizing its presence does not equate to pessimism or defeatism. Instead, it stands as one of the most practical and undercommunicated insights in personal finance. Once you acknowledge the wall ahead, you can cease questioning why the acceleration has not yet materialized. You can instead focus your efforts on constructing the necessary steps to climb over it successfully. If this perspective has shifted your understanding of compounding or broader money management in any meaningful way, please subscribe to the channel. We dedicate ourselves to unpacking concepts that many personal finance voices tend to oversimplify. Our goal is to equip you with the complete context so you can reach wiser decisions rather than relying solely on polished success highlights. Tap subscribe, activate notifications, and I look forward to connecting with you in the upcoming discussion.